Good morning, everybody. My name is Brian Scales. I'm the president and CEO of RCAP Solutions, and I want to welcome you here today on this lovely, humid, hot Wednesday. I hope that you all get what you need out of this today, and if there's anything we can do to help facilitate this, just let us know. But welcome all of you. Thank you.
We're going to start out with some welcomes and acknowledge some people in the room so everybody knows, who to go to and who everyone is. And then we're going to have some presentations. After all three presentations, we'll have a quick Q&A. So if somebody has a question or two, we can answer those. And then after that, we are going to, for the very first time, roll out our rental resume and go through it and how to fill it out and the best way to use it. If you feel the need to get up, if you need another drink, if you need to use the bathroom, please feel free to get up and go do that. So the workforce development team is made up of Family Self-Sufficiency Program, Family Self-Sufficiency Homeownership, Snowmass Housing Mobility Program, and Mass Hire Career Path Success Program. We work with all the Housing Choice Vouchers. Some of our programs work with project-based, and some of the Snowmass and the Family Self-Sufficiency all work with mainly the head of household, but we take the family's needs into account, not just the head of household. But the Mass Hire program will work with anybody in the household that is over 18. So I'm going to ask the workforce development team to come up here so we can put a face to a name. Jenna Cotter is the FSS coordinator. Wendy Siciliani is the FSS homeownership coordinator. Shauna Donovan is the economic mobility referral specialist. Kelly Bennett is the career navigator. Rose Gonzalez is our Snowmass mobility specialist. And I am Stacy Borden, the Snowmass mobility coordinator. So this is a great team to work with. So FSS, or Family Self-Sufficiency, is 5 years, and our goal is to meet you where you're at and to help you be greater than you are today, whatever that may be, whether it's education, new employment, home ownership, you need to fix your credit, whatever that may be. But you set goals so that you are just better than you reach those goals. And then we also have FSS homeownership, which is an FSS program, but it is more heavily focused on homeownership. And then Snowmass is working with voucher families who have school-age children to move to communities with high-quality schools, open spaces, green spaces, parks, stuff like that. Maybe less asphalt in the parking lot so that, your kids can go outside and play, and just safer, healthy environments. And Mass Hire Career Path Success Program is a collaboration between RCAP and Mass Hire, and we will help all voucher holders and anyone in their household over 18 find stable employment and careers. Okay. So we'd like to acknowledge a couple other people in the room. One is our special guest from the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities. Kristen Haas is the Assistant Director of Policy and Implementation. They're all at the table behind you if you want to look. Sophia Stravraki is the Snowmass Coordinator in the Division of Rental Assistance. Jaylani Nunes is the Landlord Outreach Coordinator. And then we'd also like to acknowledge Joanne McKenna, who couldn't be here with us. She is the Senior Housing Specialist over FSS and Mass Hire. And then Jabril Yunus is the Operations Manager at Mass Hire. He could also not be here. And for our RCAP team, we have Josh Badarian, who is the Chief Housing and Compliance Officer. Again, they're all behind you if you'd like to look. Nancy Rivera is our Housing Advisor. Sally Nieves is our Director of Rental Assistance. Melissa Reyes Masonette and Susie Rich are both our co-deputy directors. And we would also like to thank our marketing team of Megan and Adam and our IT teams, because without those two teams, we might not have a presentation because they have skills that we just do not have. So now we're going to get into the presentations, and I would like to invite up our community legal aid presenters.
Okay, yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah. All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming this morning, and thank you so much for inviting us to speak. My name is Sophia Lucas. I'm the Fair Housing Testing Coordinator at Community Legal Aid.
I'm Taylor Lerman. I'm a staff attorney in the Fair Housing Unit at Community Legal Aid. Nice to meet everybody.
So we wanted to go over what our unit does. We have a lot of units in Community Legal Aid. We offer free civil legal aid for eligible parties. So a lot of people that are low income individuals, they will meet our eligibility standards. What's really cool about the Fair Housing Unit is that we don't have any income limits. So if anyone's experiencing housing discrimination or anything along those lines, we get money from HUD, which is the federal government. So we are able to help anyone at any income level. Going down. So the Fair Housing Project, we are working, we are a specific unit that we help with housing discrimination. So that is anyone that is facing refusal to rent, so like in the rental market, but then we also do eviction defense. So we have a lot of people that have fair housing components when they are being evicted from their houses. So we have the community legal aid, we help with that as well. On the next slide, we have also, it's called the Fair Housing Alliance of Massachusetts. So Community Legal Aid is one of 4 organizations in Massachusetts that works to fight specific voucher discrimination. So we're going to talk a little bit about that as well today. So what is fair housing? Fair housing, it comes from the Fair Housing Act of 1968. So there's federal protected housing classes. So that's race, color, national origin, sex, which also includes sexual orientation and gender identity. We have religion, familial status, and disability. So those are all protected federally, so everywhere in the country. And then Massachusetts has really cool additional state protections. So that's marital status, sexual orientation, and gender identity explicitly. We have age, veteran status, and then sources of income. And source of income would also include voucher discrimination. So under Massachusetts, it's illegal for any of your landlords to discriminate based on if you receive rental assistance, you have a voucher, or anything like that. Okay.
Oh.
I'll keep going. Yeah. We'll have like Taylor's the attorney, so he'll talk about more the legal stuff. So I'll just do the overviews. So housing discrimination in the rental market can include a bunch of different things. But this housing discrimination can generally be defined as unfair treatment of someone's in membership in a protected class. So all of those protected classes we just talked about in the previous slide. And so housing discrimination can look like refusal to rent. It can look like discrimination in terms of terms, conditions, or privileges that a tenancy may offer. So if there's a pool, right? And someone says, you're going on a tour and they say, oh, we have a pool, but it's not open to people that are in this unit, or it's not open to people that are in this housing. And so that could, whatever that means, right? And so we see a lot of that. We see a lot of steering. So a lot of people that could have a service animal, for an example, are steered to certain buildings, are steered to certain units because that's the pet policy. And if it's a service animal, right, under the ADA and under fair housing laws, it's not a pet, it is a service animal. We see a lot of different, availability of units. So say that someone calls and they're looking for an apartment and they say, oh, I just rented that unit, right? And then we have another person that say, oh, it's still available. So like, why was that available for someone and not for me? So we have a lot of different things. Another thing that we see a lot about that we handle a lot of cases is denial of public housing. So these are like administrative cases. They're not eviction cases in court. So that is, you go to Worcester Housing Authority and they deny you a Section 8 voucher, or, you're on the CHAMP waiting list and you get denied based on that. And some of those can be discriminatory if they were denied based on a disability, or if they were denied whatever protected class. We see some of those cases as well. What we like to talk about with illegal discrimination is that what we're talking about of being denied and having discrimination, right? That only is illegal discrimination. We can bring claims in court or bring claims in administrative hearing, is when that conduct that they're doing or the housing provider is doing is because of a protected class. So it has to be connected in that way. These are some examples that I went over. So refusing to rent a property, making housing unavailable, steering, setting different terms, refusing a reasonable accommodation, which we'll talk about further, making inquiries into a protected class. So like if they just keep asking you the same questions over and over, or if they think that they're trying to get into a certain level of identity that you don't really want to talk about, right? But that's also prohibited conduct.
Okay, so voucher discrimination is protected at the state level. And so if you refuse to rent to somebody because they are offering a voucher as a form of payment, that would be a form of discrimination. And so like these are the examples. Sorry if the unit or we don't accept a Section 8, like this is not a Section 8 unit. You refuse to rent because you received some form of public assistance. So that could be welfare, for example, or RAFT, or not accepting disability like SSDI as proof. Those are all forms of voucher discrimination. And then the landlord could say like Section 8 takes too long, and these could be some of like the reasons that they cite as to why they wouldn't accept the voucher. And that is all discriminatory as well. And then using policies to exclude, so saying that you need 3 times your rent to get into the apartment because you have a subsidy or Section 8, that would also be a form of discrimination. Okay, and then there is disability discrimination, and so it's illegal to discriminate for physical or mental health related disability. Some examples of disabilities that people don't tend to think of are maybe HIV infection, for example, learning disabilities, chronic fatigue. These are all other forms of disabilities that people might not think on their face. There are 2 ways to kind of get around or to make a request based on your disabilities. So there's a reasonable accommodation and a modification, and these are used interchangeably, and the difference is pretty subtle. So for example, a reasonable accommodation is a change to a policy. So if you have a animal that's an emotional support animal and the lease says you can't have any pets, then you would be able to seek a reasonable accommodation to that policy. And it would waive that no pet requirement. Reasonable modifications are a physical change to the property. So if you have mobility issues, you're in a wheelchair and you require a ramp, that would be a physical change to the actual premises of where you're living. Okay, so I kind of talked about this, but one other point that I'll make is that if your disability is apparent on the face, meaning that you're using a wheelchair, a walker, you usually are not required to provide any kind of verification. If your disability may be something like an HIV infection or something like the more subtle, not on the face, you may be required to provide medical verification, although you really don't have to disclose a lot of your information. It could just be a letter from a medical provider saying that you have a disability and connecting it to the need for reasonable accommodation or modification. Okay, so then reasonable accommodations for voucher holders. This is asking for an increase to a payment standard. So if you have a disability related need and are having trouble finding housing with your current standard, you could seek like an increase. And you can also ask for extra time for the housing search. So if you're experiencing discrimination in the search, you can keep like a log of like your experiences. That's helpful. If you're unable to lease up because of a disability related reason, if you have a family emergency or serious illness, if your family size is making it difficult to find a unit, and any obstacles due to employment. And then there's also seeking additional bedrooms and transfers to a disability related need. So for example, if you have medical equipment that cannot fit in your one bedroom, you could seek transfer to a larger unit to accommodate your medical equipment.
Another thing that we do that's actually my job to coordinate is fair housing testing. So this is another HUD-funded program that we have. And so testing is basically, it's an investigative tool to gather evidence to prevent housing discrimination and to gather information about a housing provider. So what's really hard sometimes when people are facing discrimination, that they come to us and they say, like, I just felt off, like something happened, I don't really know what it was. Can you help us? And so this is a great tool that we can have because we hire people from the community. And so we'll have someone go in to a landlord, whether it be a phone call, whether it be a housing unit site visit, of seeing the tour of the unit. And we'll have someone that has the protected class and someone that would be the control that does not have that protected class. So race is an easy example. So we would have a black tester go in, we would have a white tester go in, and they would have the same exact characteristics. The only difference is their race. And we have them interact with the housing providers and we see the results. And a lot of the times, you wouldn't understand the difference in treatment if we didn't have those two testers to go in there. And so what we really like to do is a lot of the times the landlords are fine, right? Like that's not happening. But for those group of people that we see a lot, that is just they don't really know what's happening and they don't really understand it. And so we can identify that hey, okay, you were treated based on your race because everything else could be the same, right? Their income's the same, all of the stuff, but I wasn't offered a unit, or I wasn't offered the clubhouse access, I wasn't offered extra storage. And so why is that? We also are able to use this evidence in court. So say that someone comes and it's a refusal to rent, say it's a refusal to rent because I have raft and they said they didn't want to accept raft. Say I have a voucher, they didn't want to accept my voucher. We do the testing and we're able to go into court and freeze that unit. That landlord can't rent that unit until there's a investigation, until there's some sort of agreement. Because we know that the rental market, of course, all of you know, looking for houses, it is awful. It's very, very difficult. It's a long process. Sometimes it's it's a long, but it's also very short, right? That sometimes the units are available and then they aren't. And so that's another option that we have with community legal aid, is that we're able to do the refusal to rent claims and not just eviction defense, right? So we can start a case in that. We also work closely with the Massachusetts Commission Against Discrimination, and so we'll do complaints with them. But fair housing testing is really we're able to get that evidence that our clients are saying that I know something's happening and they don't really know why. So that's a cool avenue that we have.
Okay, so as a tenant, you have rights. It's often an imbalanced structure in terms of like the landlord feeling like they have more power over you, but there are rights. So there's two types of tenancies. There's a tenancy at will, which is that you don't have a lease. It's usually like a month to month, and then you have a tenant with the lease that is your standard. It's usually for a year, and you have provisions that you have to adhere to, and that the landlord also is obligated to follow. And then there are three types of evictions. There's a non-payment, there's no cause and cause. And so non-payment is pretty straightforward. No cause could just be that, you know, the landlord is seeking possession, they want to do renovations, they don't have to give any reason. And then cause is that you have like materially violated provisions in your lease. Then the summary process is complicated, and there are pro se tools that you can use if you don't have an attorney, which we could talk about later. But you'll get a notice to quit, and this is where you do not have to leave your unit. The landlord is just notifying you that they're seeking to basically get you out of the apartment. And so it's before there's a docket created. It usually specifies a time, and then you have to be out by that time before they can proceed in court. Often these, you should be on the lookout because these could be defective. And so if they don't properly state who all the people who are on the lease, that's like one example of how a notice to quit is defective. And then it's 14-day non-payment of rent. And you have, for non-payment, you have the right to cure. So if you can make the payment, then you could cure the non-payment allegation. The rental period or 30 days. So that's like, it has to go through like the full process of your rental period or give you a 30-day. Then when a case is opened against you, there'll be a summons and complaint, and that will start the eviction case formally in court. Once you have a summons and complaint or like a docket opened, it's a permanent stain on your record. And so that's something to be mindful of. Like it will always show up in future landlords looking at your housing history. And so that's sometimes where if you can mitigate what's happening at the notice to quit stage, it's to your benefit, but sometimes you have rights and counterclaims that will defeat the eviction case. And so it's a complicated system to navigate. Your right as a tenant includes your ability to file an answer, which just tells your side of the story, and to give any discovery and request for a jury. Oftentimes our clients don't seek a jury because we are in a housing court and the judge is a specialist and is familiar with the complexity of what's happening. Automatically there's a tier 1 mediation, and that is where the parties can try to reach a resolve between the two of them in front of a housing court specialist as a mediator. If you are unsuccessful, then the case is set for trial. And then there's an appeal process. An execution is if you lose and you get a 48-hour notice, and then you can always ask for a stay. And you can, if you are elderly or disabled, you can be eligible for a stay up to 12 months. So it could really give you, it's a powerful tool to give you more time. Okay, so I talked about in your answer having like the ability to tell your story. And so there are defenses, counterclaims, and other strategies. So as your defense, you can do the procedural defenses, which is what I was talking about, the notice to quit, not having all of the information that it needs to have. You can assert retaliation. So if you went to the Board of Health and filed a complaint because your apartment was uninhabitable, then received a notice to quit in the eviction case shortly thereafter, there's a presumption of retaliation. And then of course, discrimination on all the protected classes that we've discussed already. Counterclaims also, there's like a little bit of overlap. So bad housing conditions, the landlord interferes with your quiet enjoyment. That is just like your right to use your apartment. Discrimination again, utilities violations, security deposit, last month's rent, and unfair deceptive business practices, 93A. 93A is an effective tool because you can get up to treble damages, meaning that if you can win, you can get 3 times the amount. And then other strategies, of course, are negotiating agreement. We often call them an AFJ, an agreement for judgment. You can apply for rental assistance and you can ask for a reasonable accommodation, which we already discussed.
Thanks again. This is just this is just our numbers for community legal aid. I have flyers as well that we can talk about after. But yeah, any questions? Are we taking questions?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for holding your questions.
Yes.
Does anybody have any questions? Sure, there's lots in your mind.
Yeah.
We're gonna try to keep them a little more general and you'll have time to ask your more specific or personal questions that you don't want to ask everybody after, but does anybody have a question? Yes.
I just have a quick question, in regards to, like, you said they can't. So like, I've seen apartments online and it was like, will not accept Section 8 vouchers, and so that's illegal, they can't. Yeah, I didn't know that.
So that is always protected. So there's a couple of things that are not protected. It's mostly disability related stuff with landlords that have, it's like landlord occupied unit with under 4 units. It's like a 3-family house and your landlord lives on the bottom floor, right? There's only like certain protections with reasonable modifications. So the tenant might be responsible for paying for a reasonable modification versus if you're in like a big complex, right? It's up to the landlord because it's like, it's presumed that the landlord this is their business, right? Versus their home. With statements like that, with discriminatory statements, I don't take Section 8. I don't rent to people who have, family, children, all of that, right? That is blanket discrimination, always discriminatory, always illegal. So save those, screenshot, send them to me.
Can you speak about the process, like once somebody goes online or calls and files, what happens then?
Calls
A little
us.
bit more, yeah.
Yeah.
From like what they would need to do and the kind of the timing maybe, or.
Sure. So it depends on the timing of things, right? Because things can happen really, really fast. So I would say it's always great to text a landlord, to message on Zillow, to email, rather than have a phone call, because there's a paper trail of that. So immediately, if you see anything that put your red flags up, makes you feel a little weird, screenshot, because those ads could be gone tomorrow, right? So they're very, very, very fast. But call us. It'll be sent to me if it's in Worcester County, so I will be doing the intake. And usually at that time, I can be like, okay, I'll send testers out, or I'll test, or I'll make sure that it's available. And then we'll see. Sometimes it's like, if it's like that, right? I don't take Section 8. I call, they told me they don't take my voucher, right? We might not need to test, because that's the evidence we have, right? If you have good enough evidence. And so it could just be having a legal advocate call, Taylor call, another attorney in our office call and say, oh, we have a client that just like, I think that this is a mistake, right? Like, of course you would never say this to her, but we just want to make sure that she applied, she's available, she's able to pay, she has a voucher. What happened with that? And usually, they're like, oh yeah, we never said that, and that's fine. But sometimes it can happen really fast. Other times it's kind of like, I don't want that unit, I just want to go for claims, right? And that's kind of a longer process where it would be filing in court, doing all of that. The MCAT process is shorter than the court process. That could take a couple of years if you're in court. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
I have a question here, Wendy from Metro. So you mentioned something about reasonable accommodations and the landlord's responsibility with that. So there's like a fine line between that. Is there like a list on your website or something where landlords can, see what they're responsible for fixing versus not?
Yeah, so there's Mass Legal Help has a really good, masslegalhelp.org has a really good tenant section and then a landlord section. And so the landlords, they have a whole portion of like what landlords' responsibilities are. It only really gets to be a fine line if it's owner occupied. But for a general, understanding is that the landlords always have to be involved in the interactive reasonable accommodation process. The reasonable modifications is another story of like, it doesn't work in my unit or I might have to pay for it. But for a general rule of thumb, they have to be involved in an interactive process. That's kind of what that's how the court defines it. Yeah, the standard for that. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you.
Yes. And I'll be here after as the other question. Thank you. Thank you.
So we're ready to move on to Nathan Gaval. He is our landlord from Kensington Management. So here you go. It's all yours.
I didn't come too prepared, but I guess I will speak to the best of my ability. I've been working with RCAP for over 14 years now. We do affordable housing in the city. We are constantly developing and improving and upgrading our facilities, and we rent to Section 8 and everybody. And you know, one of the main things I would like to stress is the first impressions. I can tell you, as a landlord, our time is very valuable. You know, we are very busy, and you know, when we make a time for a tenant to come to see an apartment, for instance, my personal experience with 14 years that I've been doing this is that 8 out of 10 times they just don't show up or they come extremely late. And it's frustrating because here I am offering an apartment and going out of my way, and it seems like the respect is not being mutual. So first impressions, being on time is very important. Our time is just like your time, very valuable. It's very stressful when we try to call you back and see, oh, are you coming? Are you not coming? And no call, or phone goes to voicemail. Sort of those type of things are very important to us as landlords. Characteristics of a tenant, coming like you're going on a date. You want to come presentable, you want to come clean, respectful. I've seen it all, pajamas, this, that. You just want to be your best and show that you're a responsible person, that's going to maintain the apartment for the landlord. These are extremely expensive investments, probably the most expensive investment a landlord can make. And so they want to know that you will be a respectful tenant too, because it does cost them, and the margins are very slim for landlords these days. So, being your best in the first impression is very important to a landlord. If you were evicted prior, or if everybody, gets behind. I've been in those scenarios as a landlord before too. Credit wasn't so good. Work on your credit. We, as a business, we don't look at credit, because everybody been in a bad situation before, and we understand that. I know a lot of landlords maybe do differently, but from our perspective, and because we, work with people and have been doing so for 20 years plus, we don't look as credit being an issue. But most landlords might, and unfortunately, there's tough landlords out there. I'm probably one of the most easygoing. I'm sure a lot of the RCAP staff can vouch for that. I've been working with them for, many years. But having documentation when you did, go to court because your landlord wasn't a reasonable person, or, you fell behind because of a job. Having that documentation when you do have, when you do go to see an apartment is something that I would recommend. It just shows how upfront and honest and open you are. Landlords will go on mass courts. It is public knowledge. They can easily find out everything about the case, call the old landlord. But you being upfront and honest really speaks wonders for a landlord, because, everybody's been in, some type of situation. And it's, it would be naive of a landlord not to, take that with consideration when you are upfront and honest about it. Having your documentation, having your move-in packet when seeing an apartment, I can tell you 50% of the time, individuals that come to see one of our apartments have it, and right then and there, I lock it down for them. you know, it's easy when you have the packet, because once you sign it, I take the packet, I fill it all out, send it into RCAP, I usually email it to them. It basically locks you into an apartment. Then when you don't have the packet, and then I have another two people coming behind you that maybe have the packet, that will automatically, you know, first come, first served basis for most landlords as trying to fill the units are gonna look at that and say, you know what? This guy has a packet, I'm ready to go, you know, it's just better practice for a tenant to do and bring their packet with them, because it shows how, you know, responsible and on top of trying to get a unit, and how organized you are. Organization is very important. To me, we are a very organized company, and when you're organized and you have, you know, even pictures of your apartment showing how clean and how respectful you are to your current place and stuff like that, these are all things that if I look at it, I'm like, wow, this individual is gonna take care of my place. And it's makes you stand out with the competition, even for an open market tenant versus a Section 8 or vice versa, because we do affordable housing. We have all different, we have students, we have, you know, working people, we have Section 8, you know, and so it doesn't really make a difference from our standpoint. But when you are organized, it makes a big difference, because you are automatically looked at as like, wow, you are prepared. Preparation is everything to us. You know, questions you should ask, you know, a landlord. What questions would you want to ask a landlord? Anybody have any questions? Correct.
The apartments that you have,
Correct.
do you allow dogs?
So,
Answering a question that's leading to another question.
so your question actually falls in line with what legal aid, and it's kind of ironic I'm going after legal aid as a landlord. So we do, but when it's required because of companionship or you know, you know, they have documentation for a service dog.
Okay, so I'm asking that reason is because when I first moved into the apartments that I live now, it was beautiful, the landscaping and everything. So I'm going on my second year, and the entrance where you're going in is like all septic from the dogs peeing.
Yeah.
Are they supposed to like change that grass or just leave it there and let it sit summer after summer?
I mean, landlord's duties is to clean up, even if people have dogs and don't clean up. Unfortunately, it does
I just need
always.
to know for a health risk, because I'm a breast cancer survivor and I don't wanna get sick.
Yeah,
I'm going in and out of that entrance and I'm like inhaling that smell.
yeah,
It's disgusting.
yes, yes. So that's why a lot of landlords don't accept dogs unless they're service dogs, which they're required to.
These dogs are bigger than the human. They're taking over the community, and I mean, I
Yeah,
voice my opinions to the, you know, the office, but they'll just say, we're working on it. But that's like.
so I mean, from our standpoint, we send somebody out, we till the grass. So I mean, we have a different philosophy. We're very responsive. We have a whole crew. I have about 6 or 8 guys working, plus subcontractors on a daily. We have a development side that we build these buildings. We're actually doing a nice 94 units for affordable housing coming up. Hopefully, starting to break ground soon, right on Mason Street. We are known throughout the city to do affordable housing, and we are very responsive. So in regards to, you know, your landlord should maintain that, and you could call the Board of Health on him and
Okay, and I
get
have
some
another question.
assistance. Sure.
I have like, emails to them, voicing my opinion about that, is supposed to arrest health risk, not just to me, but the whole community.
Mhm.
And they'll just say, oh, we're working on it, or they won't even reply. So where does that leave me? Like, they don't care, or do I just
It's tough
go
because
along with it and just keep my mouth shut, or what do I do?
it's tough because I can tell you, me knowing a lot of different investors in the city and being very interconnected, where I know a lot of people because I grew up in Worcester. So,
This is not in Worcester.
oh, it's not in Worcester, so I don't know. I don't know too many people outside Worcester, but a lot of landlords in Worcester are absentee landlords, unfortunately.
They're wet.
Absentee, so they're outside investors that buy things for appreciation, and they just invest because there's more money in appreciation than in the bank sitting. So those are the type of people that buy properties that don't really take care of them. They just kind of throw people in them and rent them. Unfortunately, those are tough situations. I call it a local, health and safety, organization to
Yeah,
help you
just
with
need to
that.
know what do I need to do as far as I'm the tenant, but they're supposed to be the professionals. And I'm looking at them like.
Yeah, I hear a lot of,
My rent, you're happy, I mean, what about my health?
yeah, I hear a lot of horror stories all the time.
Yeah, that's a
And
hard.
like the average tenant with us, I can tell you, when we started, I still have the same tenants. They just either upgrade units or, if we want to renovate their unit, they move to a different unit we have available or wait for an upgrade from a 3 to 4 or vice versa. So that's pretty much, we're different as a landlord, as a company in whole. We're very responsive. I don't go with an unanswered email for more than 24 hours. So I wouldn't know what your best route is to take with that. I mean, I would find a new place. Personally, I think that would be the best route, because if they're not being responsive, they're not being respectful as a landlord, in my opinion.
Right, so I just need to.
So why don't we continue this after so
Okay.
that we can maybe get some more questions and let him finish and
Sure.
then
But that's a good
we can
example.
either have
Yeah.
to talk to
Yeah.
legal aid or something.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
So just being organized, I think, tenants coming to see a place, I would stress the organization. As a landlord, it is very frustrating when I'm waiting for somebody on, all 20 minutes. And still I wait, in some cases, and then they just don't show up. And then when I call, and then they call me and they're like, oh, can I see the apartment again? I'm like, you just wasted a whole day of mine yesterday, it's like, I feel like mutual respect is always necessary. You want to be a tenant for a building that I manage or a different landlord manages. They want to know that you are, going to respect them as a landlord as well, and treating their property with respect. So, and and it's always good, when you are a tenant, to just talk to your landlord. If you have an issue or you need more time, or they ask you to, move so they can renovate a unit because they see it not deemed habitable anymore. Which is a lot of my scenarios now. I have a lot of units that are just dilapidated at this point, that I'm want to get in there and upgrade it and change a lot of things because it's not to our standard. We have a high standard. My units are brand new. I'm a licensed contractor with the Massachusetts. I'm a licensed DLED certified renovator. So if we see issues as a landlord, we want to address them. And we're very proactive opposed to being reactive. We like to constantly upgrade. So communication is very important. You being a tenant, if you fall behind on rent, it's okay. With us, I'm sure other landlords feel the same if you communicate. I mean, if you don't pick up the phone or don't call and just,
Don't get it done.
yeah, it's not good practice in my opinion, just from my own experiences. And I've been a landlord for 20, almost 2 years. So it's definitely, communication is key. And that's the number one thing I would leave with to everybody here is when looking for a place, just come organized, and kind of like when you go to a first date, you don't want to walk in on a date just all messy. You want to go in there and show your best, and 9 out of 10 times you probably will get their apartment if you come presentable and organized. All right. Yeah. Any other questions? Feel free to ask me if you have any other questions. Anybody? Besides that, no? Sure.
What kind of questions might you as a landlord ask tenants, potential tenants?
So why are you moving from your current place is probably my number one question, and most of the time I hear this horror stories that they're in an old place. It's like, I can't get somebody to change a light bulb, or, I mean, we even change light bulbs. We don't advise anybody to go on a ladder and, God forbid, fall down, or batteries on smoke detectors, or a broken window they had for a month and nobody wants to fix. So like, you know, why is it that you're moving? You know, and most of the time it's that. And, you know, sometimes it's because I need a bigger place or that, and, other questions that I would ask, I mean, I'm very flexible and very easygoing, so I don't ask too many questions, I just kind of very laid back as a landlord, so I don't. There's not much I don't accept, so,
How long would you say your average tenant stays?
I don't, I would say anywhere from 7 to 10 years.
Okay.
Yeah, 7 to 10 years, and most of the time, it's only because they're relocating. I don't think I've had so many tenants without moving out of Massachusetts leave me as a business.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Sure.
Do you have any units available, like where is your?
That's the best question. I have a list of individuals. Our office gets, and I'm not exaggerating, 30 to 40 calls a day. We're like the leading affordable housing apartment, you know, management company in the whole city of Worcester. So I always recommend emailing with what you're looking for, and if once something pops up with that criteria, I always try to find and fill it as quick as possible. Unfortunately, we don't have enough inventory. We're in like the 400 unit range currently, and we're looking to build a 94 unit currently. And so we will have other ones, twos, and threes. It won't be for at least 2 years for those units, but we do have and constantly are upgrading. We just finished 19 units. They were rented before we even pretty much finished it. Still not finished, and it's rented. So currently we have 0 availabilities, but we have stuff coming up, and we could always pre-plan and try to figure out the best route and find something for you. So you can always email us, office at RCAP. Yeah.
Do you have a waiting list?
We do have a slight waiting list. I always give priority to my tenants current, moving from like a 3 to 4 and stuff like that. So that would be the waiting list I have. I try to keep something within reason. If people are looking for something this month, I don't have something, so I'll say, you know, I don't have something this month, maybe in the future, you'll reach out back out to us. So depending on a person and their need is when I have a waiting list for that. Not huge, but definitely have some sort of waiting list, yeah.
We have about 5 more minutes with Nathan if anyone has another question.
Any other question?
I keep asking. What's the best way to get in with you? Is it speed, portfolio? Like you put it out there at 9 a.m., you find an acceptable tenant that calls you at 10, are you just taking them or?
So I'm looking at my list of what I have, and then I will answer to, and based off needs to, if somebody's like being homeless, I kind of prioritize it because I know that they're in a dire need, you know, I have, you know, tenants that, you know, individuals that reach out to our office that are like, you know, I have 2 kids, you know, we are in a fire, I need a place tomorrow. And so if I know something's gonna be within that range, I would, you know, try to give them a place because I know there's a extreme need. But it's, there's no mind to it because it's just so many people call. That I have a waiting list, I have people transferring from different apartments as well as at the same time we're in development, so as things come available, I try to advertise. For the most part, you know, RCAP advertises for us too, so, you know, we do help a lot of the clients here, so.
Okay.
Sure.
Wendy from FSS here. Well, your properties, are they mostly just located in Worcester, or do you do Worcester County or the entire state?
So we are currently only in Worcester. It's hard to manage when you're out of Worcester because we have such a strong management company here. And I can tell you the average person that calls for an issue gets taken care of within a half hour. Yeah, if it's an emergency right away, I have people on emergency, you know, one in rotation every week. And we do everything in-house, landscaping, so we always monitor the properties that way, make sure there's no trash in the hallways and stuff like that. Everything currently is in Worcester because it would be I tried outsourcing to Webster and stuff, it was just too management difficult. And I wasn't able to give the service that I want to provide as a company to everybody, and it wasn't fair to the individuals to not have that service, because that's where we like to be.
Quality
Yeah.
versus quantity.
Correct, yes.
As a landlord, what advice would you give for the tenants to look for in a landlord? Or as a property manager?
Very much trend.
Of course, my employees.
Oh, great.
Great question. Qualities, can you redo the question? I just,
Like, as a landlord, like what advice was, so you don't have anything available,
yeah,
you know, they're looking for places. What advice would you give them when they're looking at somebody else other than you because you're not available?
so, just being organized, really, just being organized and being persistent, but not too harassing. So there's a difference between being persistent and harassing. You want to email, say, I'm ready to go, I have all my documentation, I'm looking at this unit. But don't be overwhelming, because then it comes off to too much in a sense, you know, be respectful.
The what they should look for in a landlord.
Oh, landlord, you definitely want to look for references. So, yeah, I mean, you want to look at the property speaks for itself, you know, first impression for you, for a landlord, you want a first impression for the property. If you come to the property and you see it all falling apart, you're like, oh, yeah, I don't know if I want to live here, you know? And I feel a lot of the city doesn't have the city of Worcester unfortunately has a parking issue. It's always been like that, and everybody has 1-2 cars these days. So, I mean, not having so many needs and wants, you know, just try to keep it a little bit more like, okay, space is a thing, you know, don't be so strung out on one aspect of an apartment. Be flexible, you know, because unfortunately Worcester's, you have to be flexible. Every building almost looks the same, but you know, parking is always going to be an issue. So I noticed that a lot of people are like, oh, there's no parking there, I don't even want to see that apartment. It's like, okay, I mean, you're losing out on a brand new apartment, and I'm sure 90% of the city don't have parking, so it's tough, you know, it's tough to find all your needs and wants and you're on your checklist. But you know, I'd say be flexible with some aspects of what you're looking for, because you know, you could get a great landlord, and I know there is some great landlords out there, and you just want to keep your options open when looking. That's my advice. Yeah,
Do any of your other apartments have storage?
we don't unfortunately give any storage because the basements are locked because of rodents, and there is no hallways to store because of the fire department. So we don't have any storage, so we always recommend getting like a U-Haul or an extra storage place for storage. Because 9 out of 10 times when you put stuff in a basement, based off my experience, it's gonna get moldy, it's gonna be trash, and then you're gonna be upset at the landlord telling you, sure, you can store stuff in the basement. It just brings a lot of rodents and a lot of different smells in the building and stuff. So we have always locked the basements, keep them locked. And you know, from the front door to the back door, I tell the tenant, whatever you want to put in the apartment's up to you. But you know, in the hallways, especially with the city of Worcester, they do fire inspections randomly. And with the new rental registry in the city, they're going to be doing inspections a lot more. And they're really scrutinizing landlords, making it a lot tougher for them to, you know, allow a lot of things they used to allow because of the fact that now they're getting audited in a sense with the rental registry.
What is the rental registry?
Something the city implemented for landlords to make sure that the buildings are in like minimum standards. They implemented this. This was something that they've spoken about. Now landlords are required to pay $15 a unit plus about $100 for each inspection every 5 years for them to come through and check all the buildings. It's through the inspectional services of the city of Worcester. And so that's for them to make sure that there's no fire hazards, no stuff in hallways. So they do this randomly. So you sign up for it as a landlord, And then what they do is they can just come to the property at any given point and check the hallways. That's their like invitation to do so. So it's something that's mandatory, the city requires us to do, and we get fined $200 a month if we don't sign up for it. So it's something that's very important, and it's basically for the safety of the tenants. So I mean, we welcomed it because all our places are in a new or higher standard. Or if it's not in a new or higher standard, we are currently renovating or trying to get access to renovate the place. So for us, it wasn't too difficult to transition to that rental registry, but a lot of landlords don't like it. Because, you know,
So as coordinators, we frequently get questions from tenants that call us and they need to talk to their landlord. They're intimidated, worried. They're worried about their housing. You seem like a pretty easy guy that, will talk to them. What is the best way that a tenant can call their landlord and have a conversation about something, especially if it might not seem like a favorable thing? Whether it's credit, being late on rent, if something accidentally got damaged, they're having a problem with a neighbor.
I mean, I can't speak for other landlords because I know that there's so many different varieties and characteristics of people that, can change their mood very easily. And, some landlords don't want to spend the money, and the margins are very slim, I can tell you, from a landlord's perspective. Taxes and everything in the city has gone up so dramatically that like everybody looks at a landlord like, oh, he's rich. No, it's not like that. By the time they pay their mortgage, their water, their insurance, their taxes, their maintenance, this, that, they're left with a very slim margin. So, you have to, if something breaks, you have to talk with them with sympathy and understanding that they're not millionaires. Some people only have a 1 3-decker and that's their whole life savings, and they have a mortgage, and so every landlord is going to be different. We're larger, we work with different investors, so we're, a lot different. So we have a lot of wiggle room, but some landlords don't have the wiggle room. I hear, they come to me to try to manage their property and they're like, we can only afford this. And unfortunately, we can't take on those kind of landlords to manage because we don't want to have that very slow margin to be able to fix things to our standards. So, when you want to, I just would say reach out sympathetically, understanding that you weren't trying to break something, or you weren't trying to be late on payment, but you are going to be on top of it, and tell them worst case scenario instead of the best case, because when best case comes and goes and it didn't happen, worst case is always the better route, in my opinion. Say, I'm going to pay you by the 10th, no worries. Just being communication is important, especially for me. I love communication. So I stress the fact that just communicate. What's the worst that can happen? You can say, oh man, that broke. You gotta fix it. So
Well, thank you.
yeah, you're welcome.
So next is Misael Harrigan, and he is one of our inspectors at RCAP Solutions.
All right. Well, good morning, everyone. I'm sorry, I do speak a little loud, so I don't know what it is. You can ask people who know me here, they'll tell you. So like she said, my name is Misael Harrigan. I am a housing quality inspector here at RCAP Solutions, also known as HQS. For those of you who don't know, the HQS inspection is required by HUD to ensure that properties are meeting a minimum standard if they're planning on receiving a subsidy or currently are receiving a subsidy. So that's what there are 4 types of inspections that we conduct. One is the initial inspection, which is upon moving or prior to you moving into a unit. We do special inspections, and those are inspections that are requested by the tenant or by the landlord because of some type of issue or something that's going on in the unit that hasn't been addressed. We do annual or biannual inspections, and those are required by the program. And then the final one is quality control or quality assurance, QC inspections. Those aren't done by your inspector. Those would normally be done by either a manager or it could be the state. And those are basically just to make sure that the inspectors are doing what they're supposed to be doing. So those are the 4 types of inspections that we conduct. As far as what we look for in the unit, each unit is its own. Some of you who have been with me or I've done your inspections know one unit is one way, another unit's a different way. We're looking at the same things, but they all kind of come off a little bit differently. We're just making sure that everything in the unit works the way it's supposed to be working, and that you and your family are going to be safe in it. We want to make sure that the outlets are working. We want to make sure that your smoke detectors are up. We want to make sure that your stove works the way it's supposed to. Your refrigerator, your sink, your plumbing, your toilet, that it's actually attached to the floor. You'd be surprised how many places you go into and the toilets are just moving around and everything. We check what's called the lot line on the property. So a lot of people have the misconception that we're just going inside your unit, and then when they see us doing certain things, they question like, what are you doing? Why are you checking that? I don't go there. I don't do this. But we do check the lot line. If you and your family have access to it, we're going to check it. We will open your refrigerator. That is a scary one for some people. But we do open up your refrigerator. We're not checking to check on your food or see what you're cooking. We're just opening up. We want to make sure that the light is working, that you don't have shelving that's broken or missing. We want to make sure that the refrigerator door seal isn't coming apart. Nate loves that one.
Yeah.
We do go into the basements, even if you don't have access to it. Because if your water tank is down there, if your heating system is down there, we're going to go down there and check. We're going to walk the grounds. The only thing we won't check is obviously your neighbor's units. I have a lot of people who come to me and they'll be like, they don't clean downstairs. They don't do this. I'm like, there's nothing I can do about it. I can't go into their apartment. My job is to check yours and make sure that, everything is the way it's supposed to be. Things that help us out in the inspection is that if we're coming in and there's something going on in your unit, something isn't working, the best way for us to check it is for you to have it actually available for us to see it. If there's windows that aren't working and the sashes are falling, you might want to move the furniture away. Because unfortunately, the downside is we won't move your furniture. If we can't get access to the outlets, if we can't get access to the windows, it's probably not going to get checked. We'll ask. And that's the only thing we can really do. Upon an initial inspection, we always recommend, please do not move your stuff in ahead of time. No matter how good the apartment is, and you're tempted to be like, let me just start moving some stuff. The landlord said I can put some stuff in there. Do not do it. Because the more space we have available, the more things we have available for us to see, touch, smell, or whatever, the more stuff we have available, the better the inspection will be. When you have things in there, that's how items get missed. And that's what we're trying to avoid. Unfortunately, even in that case, do items get missed? It happens. We're humans. Sometimes you're in there and the landlords are talking to you the entire time and you're trying to focus over here or the tenant's there and they're asking a lot of questions so we usually recommend for everyone, it's like, let me do what I need to do and then I'll come back and answer any questions. But sometimes it doesn't work out that way. Especially when you have people who maybe have a difficulty communicating because of language or something, they don't understand that they need to give you that room. So they're pointing out, well, look at this, look at that, we can't get everything fixed. There might be some things that you want to be changed or something. Unfortunately, we're not able to do everything. I have people sometimes who will say, this carpet's been here 10 years. And I'm like, it's in really good shape. You know what I mean? And people say, yeah, but I've shampooed it. You've done a great job. I mean, there's not much I can do about it. That's kind of the inspection process. Trying to think if there's anything I'm missing. I'm sure there's some people have questions in here, and that's kind of easier to answer questions that way, or we kind of touch base on things. So I'll kind of open it up real quick to questions if anybody has any questions regarding inspections.
What process do they follow if there's a complaint in the apartment?
The
hierarchy.
Your first phone call should always be to your landlord. And you have to allow your landlord the time to make the repairs. You can't call the landlord today and on Monday and on Wednesday, call us and say he's not doing the repairs. You have to allow them the time to do the repairs. Obviously, if it's an emergency, that's a different story. If it's an emergency and you got water leaking through your ceiling or something like that, that's a different story, because those should be addressed right away. If the landlord doesn't, then yes, you give us a call immediately. But other items, hey, wouldn't even know what to think about right now. I got a stained ceiling tile. You know what I mean? As long as it's not an active leak, you have to give him the time to do it. Now, if all of a sudden you notice a week or two goes by, the landlord's not responding to you and nothing's being done about it, now you go ahead and you contact your representative, and they will inform inspections that there's issues going on. Usually what happens in that case is the inspector will probably reach back out to you to kind of find out what's going on. Hey, got a phone call, I got notified something's going on, what's going on? And then we're usually going to call the landlord. If the landlord, and then what we'll do is we'll actually schedule an inspection. But we'll also call the landlord just to give him the heads up. If the landlord gets there and fixed the item before the inspection, you can easily call us and say, hey, he came, he fixed it. No harm, no foul. If not, then when we go out to do the special inspection, we'll go ahead and we'll address it at that point and proceed how we need to proceed with it.
Do these services only that you offer for RCAP, like in people that are involved in RCAPs, like if you administer the subsidy or they're?
Yes, unfortunately, our inspections, I work for RCAP Solutions. I can only do RCAP units. Worcester Housing has their own inspections that they do. Other agencies have whoever it is that conduct their inspections.
What happened with the landlord opens the door to the building? He have inspection, the resident know to fix the door, he never fix.
Usually what will happen is if we fail an item, like something like that, a security door, right? And it's not being fixed. Well, when we go back out there, we're gonna stop the payments on the landlord until he addresses it. If at that point the landlord continues and he doesn't do it, we're probably gonna we're probably gonna terminate the contract, and your rep would end up reaching out to you and let you know what the next steps would be after that.
And the mailbox too, because the landlord resident know for the post office central, he's the box mail to the tenant, he never did.
Yeah, so I mean, we probably address that as well, but the mailboxes tend to fall on the federal government and the post office. But obviously that's also a security thing, especially depending on where it's located. So if it's located outside where everyone has access to it, it's an issue. That's a big issue. And we would address it with the landlord.
The thing is, when having protection on my apartment, the people go there to build it, he see that. But the landlord never fix it. I don't know how past infection.
Yeah.
When he don't fix that before the after that.
Well, that's something that we can go ahead and touch base afterwards, because if it's something that we can address, then we'll go ahead and do it. So we can touch base on that after this. Okay. Yes, sir.
How do you guys handle the difference between a tenant caused issue and landlord caused?
Give me a good one there. All right. Tenant caused issues. All right. So there are some items. This one is a little bit tougher. We've had changes in our systems where tenant caused issues we were able to separate. And when we would do our inspection, we would write it up just like that. We would have tenant cause issues that the tenant would be responsible for, and then we would have everything else that the landlord would be addressing. The tough part is right now, everything kind of just gets listed on the landlord. So at this point in time, it's kind of up to the landlord how to address. Sometimes we know. If I go into your home and you tell me I did this, I'll probably write it down on my paperwork, tenant stated she caused this issue or whatever, and she's gonna fix it. Depending on what the issue is, as long as it's not a safety issue, we might not force the landlord to push it for right now. I mean, we'll address it with him, but then he has to go to you to try to get it, to try to rectify that situation. But right now, unfortunately, everything we do is coming on the landlord, and then it's the landlord who determines how he wants to approach it. He can, whatever his legal routes are to kind of try to rectify it.
At what point do you get the board of, like the city board of health involved, or do
Board of Health.
inspectional services?
So Board of Health, I always say, is your friend. Yeah. I mean, it is what it is. Board of Health is there to help you. It's not there to cause you any harm. There are certain things that we can't inspect for. Even though we might know what it is. For example, I was always trained that when it came to mold, I'm not a mold inspector. I can't call it mold. If you suspect mold, you should be contacting the Board of Health. I'm not an asbestos inspector. So again, I can note loose material, but if you suspect the asbestos, you need to contact the Board of Health. Again, lead paint is about the only one that we touch base on, and it's not that we're calling it lead paint, but it's peeling paint, and we will mark it as so, and it needs to be treated or rectified. The only thing I can't do is tell the landlord how to do it, because again, I'm not a lead inspector and I'm not testing it. I'm just saying there's loose paint there and you need to take care of it. So
So with that, with lead paint, would you then call the Board of Health, or would you say?
no, it would be up to the tenants to contact the Board of Health. Yeah. Yeah, it would be up to the tenants to contact the Board of Health. But like I said, Board of Health, I always tell all my tenants, the Board of Health is your friend. I mean, like they told you earlier, if you contact the Board of Health and the landlord all of a sudden afterwards gets mad at you and says, all right, I'm gonna evict you, then you go to them, because now you're looking at retaliation. You know, but I mean, you should only be calling. I mean, to me, you should only be calling the Board of Health if it's a severe. If we can't address it, you should definitely contact the Board of Health. We can do a lot. The Board of Health can do a little bit more. I won't get into that because they're not here, and that's something they should be answering for
Will they keep
themselves.
it anonymous when you call them? Or
I'm sorry?
will they keep it anonymous when you call them?
That part I can't tell you. I don't believe they do, because they're gonna have to come out. They're not just gonna take a report and call the landlord. They're gonna come out, they're gonna inspect it themselves. Then they're gonna contact the landlord. They're gonna tell the landlord, this is what needs to get fixed. This is how much time you can do it. And then they have other avenues that they can force landlords to do repairs. I mean, unfortunately, the downside to us is the most I can do is stop a landlord's rent.
What happened when the building have it blocked? If the other people have it, that animal there is, they have a section A, different section A, different building, but the people have it blocked in the house.
For what?
The block, the chinchik, so called chinchik.
Oh, bed bugs?
Bed bug, yeah. Two people have it in
Yeah,
the
see,
building.
so bed bugs, for example, if I knock on your door, one of my first questions to you is, are there any problems, concerns, issues? My second question to you, mice, rodents, mice, roaches, or bed bugs. If you tell me that you have bed bugs, I'm going to tell you right now, I will not be entering your apartment. I will turn around, I will leave, and I will notify the landlord that he has to complete 2 treatments before I'm able to even come back.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So speaking of bed bugs, in the apartment complex community, mattresses are sitting in the dumpsters right now.
Yeah, they should be removed.
I called them again and said, what's going on, plus the outside key and stuff, 2 things, and more letter.
If currently you have a subsidy,
We're working on it.
if currently you have a subsidy, my recommendation to you, it would be to contact your representative, let them know that you've tried to contact the landlord. That's why email works best, because you always have a chain showing, look, this is when I tried to contact the landlord, and now you're able to contact your representative, so your representative can forward that complaint over to inspections.
Okay, so I emailed them to let them know about the mattress, been there for a month. The trash guy, I took a video, he comes in, takes the trash, but leaves the things. And I don't know
Yeah,
whose
city.
mattresses they are, but I go dump my trash and I'm like, I don't know if there's bed bugs out there about it.
Yeah, and that's a perfect legitimate complaint. I've gone into basements and I found mattresses in basements. I won't go near them. I don't know what's on there. I don't know who's using it. I don't know where it came from or anything like that.
It's been raining, thunder, and the mattresses are still there.
Yeah, and that's why you see that a lot of the trash companies won't take them. So the landlord has to pay someone or to actually take it, because it's not like as simple as just grabbing it and throwing it in the trash.
He says we're working on it, not in writing, but verbally, we're working. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what we want to do.
Anything else? All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you. So I'm just gonna go over for a very quick minute what is in your folder. And then we're going to go over the tenant rental resume. And then, you'll be able to, if you want to stay for the rental resume, that would be great. This will be an ongoing process with our workforce development staff. So we will continue this. It won't be a here it is and goodbye type situation. But there is something for Snowmass for everybody that has a housing choice voucher. If you are interested, you also need to have children under 18 in the household. If you do not have at least one child under 18, you are unfortunately not eligible. And you also have to be in a non-Snowmass area. We do outreach to all our people in non-Snowmass areas, but if you have a question, please feel free to ask. There is something in here for mass hire. Again, mass hire is for anybody on our Section 8 project-based program. And it is for everyone over 18 in your household. You can't refer friends to our program. You can tell them to go directly to mass hire if they want services. Am I forgetting anything, Kelly, Shayna? Okay. And then just some more Snowmass. We usually give these benefits for landlords so that if you're going to see an apartment on your own and already enrolled in Snowmass, you cannot use Snowmass unless you've met with us and enrolled and gone through the process. But this is like if you are driving around and see a for rent sign and happen to have this in your car and the landlord's doing the lawn, you can say like, hey, I'm really interested in this. This is what this has to offer. And then you tell them, I'll have them call you. Can I have your number? And we'll explain more about the whole process. We've also included some other information that is typically or can be useful, such as if you're having difficulty paying your rent, what you can do. We have affordable housing you can look at. Some of our other financial programs, home base, home loan modification. If you're in a house, typically an example of that could be somebody who's elderly and needs a bar in the shower to be able to still stay in the house and be safe in the house. They can help install that bar. And then something explaining more about FSS and FSS homeownership. Just say great program. It is a win-win for everybody involved. There is a financial benefit to the tenant that enrolls. Plus, you could get education, possibly purchase a home, a better job, whatever it may be. And then here's something from our HCEC about homeownership support. We offer classes around homeownership. If your credit might not be as favorable as you would like it to be, we offer a financial capabilities class, and they will work with you to better your credit in a free and long-standing way, so that you can be better and have, more opportunities. Then we included our 2023 impact report, if you'd like to look at that. And then some housing search websites, whichever ones you want to use. Here's a list of them that you can check. You can check multiple, however you want. And then just some articles about factors that determine where people live. Something important about renters insurance. We're seeing that landlords sometimes are requiring renters insurance. Why should we rent to you? Just kind of, just tips and information. Questions you can ask when you're considering renting an apartment. Remember, the landlord is choosing you. We want you to be able to choose the landlord also. We want the landlord to be happy but we need you to be happy so that the landlord's happy. So here's some questions. You can add your own, whatever you may be. And then 5 essential things to do before signing a lease. The number one thing, you need to read that lease word for word. If there's something in there that you don't like, have a conversation with the landlord. Landlords are typically willing to listen. But grills, if a grill on the deck is very important to you, but yours says no grills, that could put your housing in jeopardy. So you want to read your lease and make sure that you agree to everything. Especially another thing is penalties. I've seen like 20% of the rent as a penalty if you're late. So make sure you read your leases. That's my PSA for that. So I think we are doing really well on time. I'm sorry, there's a couple more things. We also have a checklist. This is another thing that we really value and really, really want you to take the time to do. I know when you're moving in or moving out, you're so busy, you're probably tired. This is a walkthrough list, and it has bedrooms, bathrooms, you can add stuff. Put it in writing. If you walk in and there's a crack in the door, you need to write that down. So when you move out, you are not paying for a new door. You sign it and the landlord signs it. There's also a column here that's the estimated cost. So you can know. Because if you have a $3,000 security deposit and the landlord's like, okay, I'm going to give you $1,000 back. And you're like, why? And they're like, there's all this damage. And you're like, yeah, but the window was broken when I moved in. You're stuck. So you want to sign this. You want the landlord to sign this. Take the time to do it, please. Okay. So now we have the tenant rental resume. Do we have all those slides up here for all pages? Or is this the only one? Okay, I guess it doesn't matter. So if you want to take out your tenant rental resume, there is a QR code right here that you can scan it, but it is also on our RCAP website. So you will be able to find it. It is fillable, so you don't have to keep this. You can also, we printed extras. If you want to take extras as things change, you can also take some home. So I'm just going to go over it really quick, and then we're here for questions. A lot of you probably have done this many times, already know, but we find when people fill out applications, like Nathan probably says, like, yeah, my landlord's name was Jane. Yeah, I don't know her phone number, so I left it blank. They can't call for a reference then. So that holds up you finding safe and secure housing. So we want to help you organize all your thoughts before you get in front of the landlord. So obviously name, address, phone, email. But also, I'm sorry, keep in mind, this is a document for you. I know resume is typically you write it and give it out. We have created this document for you. This is just the name we liked and we chose because it's your housing resume for you to keep. We're not suggesting that you give it to a landlord because you don't always need to. So the first part is introduction. What do you want the landlord to know about you? Maybe legal services can speak a little bit about this. In creating this, we talked about, and they talked about, there are protected classes in Massachusetts. We are not suggesting that you provide all that information and say, like, if I move in, I will need these accommodations. That's not the time and the place. If you're with Snowmass, like, you can also come and talk to us with, like, we're doing this work with you. We want to work with you hand in hand. And when we don't have answers, we call legal services. So do you have a couple do's and don'ts maybe for filling out and doing an introduction?
I mean, you don't have to tell your landlord anything that you don't want them to know. I think that like a lot of like when we're talking about reasonable accommodations is that the landlords were asking for too much, right? And so like all the landlord needs to know with like for a disability or like a health related reason is that I have a disability. This is what will help me use my apartment to the best of my ability. Period. The end. And the landlord, you know, can be like, okay, well then I need a medical verification letter. There's a whole discussion that we talk about that like technically you should be able to write your own verification letter. There's no like law in Massachusetts that says that you have to provide a doctor's note. But a lot of people like want medical verification. I think that that is kind of like what it is of also like something's readily available. So like if someone's gonna like discriminate against you based on your sex, right? It's kind of like how I present, right? Like, they might just like do that in general, which is hard. So I would think for like anything about like reasonable accommodation or like disability or medical reasons, you don't have to say anything that you're not comfortable with. Yeah.
Just a quick, we get this a lot. We've had some landlords say like, well, I want to meet your children before. How old are your children? Like, and that kind of like, well, you know, sometimes landlords will say, I don't want to rent to teenagers. I don't want to rent to babies. How does somebody answer the question when they're asked something that is of a protected class?
Yeah, and that's really difficult. I'm sorry if anyone has dealt with that. I think that a lot of what we're seeing and a lot of stuff that community legal aid has done and has been the lead laws. And we've been, you know, successful in advocating and doing big lawsuits about like, you know, Massachusetts and Worcester with de-letting, right? Because in Massachusetts law, anyone like for children under 6, right, your house has to be de-letted. And so there's a lot of those, right, where it's like, okay, maybe that's why you're not renting to children. Maybe that's why I'm not doing that or whatever. But I think that, like, you know, if you feel comfortable with it, you can say, well, I know that in Massachusetts laws, right, that's illegal that you're saying that you know you have to rent familial status is protected. It's a protected class. I also think that like it's difficult to say that, and I completely understand that if you're being discriminated against, right, like that's another whole psychological, emotional avenue that's being hurt for you. And so I would say like, if you're not comfortable saying that, remain as neutral as possible and then tell us about it. That's what we say a lot with our testing is that we ask our testers to just like be a gray rock, right? You don't want, because then like, if you know, they're saying, well, when I was there and I remember this interaction, and then the tester was like, oh yeah, I know how that is, right? Like, it's not like the landlord could like say that to use against you. And so I would say those are the two options that you have, both options to call us after.
And I would just add that, like, if you are experiencing that, like when you get back to your car or like to like a safer space, you should definitely jot down like some notes about that interaction, and that would just be like our advice to keep a record.
But just to clarify, if the landlord asks on an application who is going to be living in this unit, they're asking the first, like, can they ask for the ages of each of those people? That
Usually they ask for date of births.
which so that's legal, they can ask that, but then if they deny you.
Correct.
Okay, correct.
Okay. So then the next part is your 5-year rental history. This is the part that you need to be exact and complete so that the landlord knows. We talk to people every day about, they say, you know, I get a great reference from this landlord. I'm not sure about this one. Another, like with the snow mass, we'll talk to you about that. We'll try to help you through that. So that you can present it again in the best light. And also, yeah, so just be complete in this section. So then the next part is employment. Wait a minute, sorry, I'm on the wrong page. So the next part is employment. Again, complete it, exact. We have had landlords say like, yeah, I'm gonna call their employer first. and we typically say like, oh, if you want to verify employment, typically we ask for pay stubs. Because not everybody wants a landlord calling their employer. So we do, as Section 8 try to help landlords just say like, well, they have these pay stubs, maybe you could just use those. So the other, I think, you can also write sources of income in here, just so you have them. You probably know your sources of income, but sometimes when you're filling stuff out, you might forget. So you could do sources of income. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I have a quick question about the rental history. It says for the last 5 years.
Yeah.
Do they, I know a lot of like landlords, what do they usually, like as far as, like if you've been at one place for 5 years? So should you still include?
Because I have
How
seen
far
a lot
back?
say at least 2 references. Do you have a,
Yeah, I mean, two
easy
is
going
fine.
in now?
I think two is always better than one.
Okay. So this does say 5 years. We could say 10 years, whatever it is. I helped somebody the other day. She's lived at her place for 23 years. That landlord might only want 1 reference. So again, put more information, I would say. And then if you don't need it, then you don't need it. But that would be a question you'd probably have to ask each individual landlord if they wanted to.
Okay, I have another question that can I ask really quick? So, where I'm at now, my previous landlord passed away, and then my previous landlord before that was where I am now. Not the same location, but the same landlord.
Mhm.
So it would be like for the past 13 years, I only have like 1 landlord.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty
So should I
stable.
still,
I
because
mean, I
before
know
that, I wouldn't.
me as a landlord, if I see 13 years, I don't even question it. I mean, some landlords might be more strict.
Cause like before that, I don't have like, I don't have a way to, I don't have the contact information,
Yeah, but
so.
13 years shows stability. Most landlords like stable individuals. So that's pretty good.
Okay.
Yeah, they don't want
Pretty
somebody
good.
who's gonna try to move out in 6 months.
Yeah.
That's a lot for them.
Yearly turnovers for landlords cost a lot of money. They like kind of long term.
You could also note that he was your landlord, but he passed away.
Yeah.
And just let the new landlord know that. So, yeah. So then we do ask number of adults, number of children, for your information, not that you have to give it. How many bedrooms do you need? Your credit score. Again, we have a financial capabilities class here. If you'd like to better your credit, please feel free to come see us. You can register online. It's a great class. They will continue to work with you. They have some flexibility outside of the classes I'm at most of the time. So definitely great class. You can also do homeownership stuff with them if that is a direction you would like to go into. So then credit score. I personally have heard from a lot of landlords, some don't care what your credit score is. Some want an 800. We as Section 8, in our small programs, do try to say, really, could you do a little bit lower than 800? 800 is a pretty high credit score. But again, this section is more for you to organize your thoughts when the landlord says, how is your credit? I had a landlord say, I don't care what their credit score is, but if they had, I hope this is okay, but if they've been evicted with a voucher, then I don't want to take them. If they've been evicted without a voucher, I'm not going to hold that against them. Because we're saying this rent is affordable. So the landlord's saying if it's not affordable and they're saying it is, where are we going to go from there? It could have been your credit isn't good at the moment because of one situation. And credit can take a long time. It goes up and down and based on so many things. So what are you going to say to your landlord? If you have an 850, great. Walk in. You don't need to say anything else probably. If you have a 550, why is it 550? What you don't need to disclose every little bit of your life, but could it have been, I have a car on there and I got into a car accident, was totaled, and 2 days later I lost my job because I couldn't go back because of that car accident. Like, explain it. We have found that some landlords are willing to listen about why your credit is good, or not good, I should say. So then there's a section for notes, a section for questions. We also have, a list of questions that you can add on to. Don't ask what you're not comfortable with, just ask what you're comfortable with. But just have a conversation with the landlord, and put your best foot forward. So, and there's also, if you feel like you've been discriminated against, if you're in Snowmass, we want you to call us and we're gonna give you a direct connection. Because HLC, Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, is with us, and we are working with our specific Snowmass voucher holders on some of these issues. So does anybody have any questions about the rental resume? Yes.
Not necessarily about that, but just in regards, so like, so I'm not in Snowmass, so if
Yep.
I have like an issue, how would I get in contact with? you
I
guys?
have a bunch of flyers.
Okay, are you guys located here or are you located?
We're on Main Street.
Okay.
They have other ones. The other thing is after, I'm glad you asked that. The other thing is after this, we have everyone's emails. We are going to email you all the contacts, the papers, also the people that are on the Zoom. We will also email them everything because they are not here to get it in person. And we'll give you, community legal aid. I know everybody doesn't live exactly in Worcester. They do have satellite offices, but we will send you information on how to contact them if you have a legal issue. And your inspections and Snowmass and all that stuff. So, any other questions?
I don't know, this was in here, but I didn't see like an English one, so I didn't know if this was anything that regarding.
Yes, if anybody has a packet that was finished, you can.
Oh.
We can change it out for you. Yeah. Sorry. Well, no other questions? Okay, so we want to thank all of our participants. Yep,
We have some.
okay.
In the chat, we have somebody asking, what about rodents issues?
Like, what should they do if they have rodent issues?
That goes for myself.
Again, it goes back to first line of defense is contacting the landlord. Again, given, depending on the severity of it, they might want to call the landlord. If they're getting no response within a day or two, is again, contact their worker so we can go ahead and the worker can go ahead and contact us and we can go out there. That's probably a phone call that we're probably gonna go right out there and call the landlord at the same time.
And then the second question is, when treatments are done and we just feel like continue, what should they do?
So, all right. So from my experience working with some exterminators and when we've gone to properties, there's a couple different parts to the extermination. The first part is the extermination itself. And once, several treatments, depending on the severity of it, usually about like 2 treatments have been done, the tenant has to take over. And most of the exterminators, that's what they tell you, the tenant has to take over in regards to basically just trying to keep everything clean. That's literally it, and that's what the exterminators will say. The down part though is if the issues, you're living in a 3-decker and the issues are going on in other units, you can do everything and anything and the problems will still persist. So then it comes down to the landlord having to do the entire building and all 3 tenants then taking over after the treatment. So it's one of those things it's kind of tricky because you kind of got to go out there, see where the issue is, treat that, then the landlord might need to still have the whole building treatment. But then if all of a sudden one tenant is not doing their part,
It'll take long,
it'll take longer.
very long.
But as long as the landlord's getting the treatment done, at least that's something. And it's just a matter of dealing with the tenants afterwards.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'd like to add, no extermination is one time either, unless it's just, they're not doing it right. So it's always 3 or 4.
Great. Any other questions? No? Well, the workforce development team would like to clap and congratulate for all our participants that you guys took the effort and the time to get here and come and listen. This is the first presentation that we're doing. We, in the years coming, we hope to expand we get a lot of questions about inspections, legal services, what to expect from a landlord. So we will most likely be inviting legal services back to discuss more in depth and how to deal with situations that come up. So the last thing is everybody got an evaluation. And could you just take a few minutes to fill that out? So as we move forward, we can better our presentations and provide what you guys would like.